everyone. For those of you who are back, or those of you who never left, we are gonna switch directions a little bit. And this mind-body, this contemplative session is going to be on anger, an emotion that, as part of LOCA, we've been doing these focus groups and doing interviews with tons of people trying to figure out what people are experiencing based on the sub-identity group they belong to. And anger is something that comes up very often, but is very conflicted as an emotion. And so we thought that, the LOCA team thought that this is an emotion that we should actually center and just work through, And someone in chat had mentioned the fire in Hawaii. And so that's something I just want to center right now and just say there are people suffering everywhere. The impacts of the ecological and climate crisis are here. The impact of colonialism is here, right? The impact of an extractive, exploitative, neoliberal model has arrived for every one of us. No one gets to escape anymore. And so there is so much suffering that is happening continuously that it kind of triggers a lot of emotions for us. Anger is one of them. The funny thing about anger is it's natural, right? It can be positive, it can be intelligent, it can be calculated, it can be harnessed to do good. But so often we feel so conflicted about it because we are told to feel shame about having anger. So I wanted to take a moment and talk about different kinds of anger, right? Because there is a kind of anger that is righteous, justified. When we respond to injustice, to unfair conditions that cause suffering for other beings. There is anger that is incredibly self-centered and harmful, right? This happens all the time. So, all kinds of different levels of anger. There is the anger when a parent sees their child doing something that's dangerous, and there is this instant anger that arises to wanting to protect your child, right? And so the most important thing, I think, when we start this exercise is to sort of see how multifaceted anger is. It's not this one dense thing, right? It has so many different facets to it. The practice that I wanted to offer, the practice that I feel comfortable offering is called Tonglen. As I said earlier, it is a Tibetan Buddhist practice that is translated as giving and receiving. And it's almost like a practice where you exchanged a difficult emotion. You take a difficult emotion away from someone and you offer a compassionate emotion to them. And so we are going to try and work with this practice to address anger. And it might seem counterintuitive, right? But when you work with Tonglen, you are required to acknowledge and give love to the thing that you are struggling with. So it's really an exercise that I think works, especially for activists and people who are really invested in the environmental and climate crisis. I should pause and say, why am I, Dikila, giving this meditation? I come from the Himalayas. I am of Bhutia origin. I am the daughter of a Tibetan Buddhist nun and teacher who passed away. And I come from a familial lineage of female Buddhist practitioners and teachers. But I never thought I would end up doing anything in Buddhism other than privately being a Buddhist practitioner. I always knew I was an environmentalist. From a very young age, I worked for the World Wildlife Fund for 14 years, was mostly overseas in Asia. And somewhere in the early 2000s, I began experiencing what we now know is called eco-anxiety or climate distress. There were no terms then. And I started experiencing that in a really debilitating way, actually. I would have nightmares. I had sleep disorder, couldn't sleep. Yeah, it was just pretty hard. And I learned in that process of sharing with my community what was happening with me, that almost everyone I knew who was working in the field had the same emotions. And when I began speaking to the elders in my own community in Sikkim in the Himalayas, I found out that there was so much trauma in the older generation of what we now call solastalgia, of seeing their identity break down because the landscape was physically breaking down due to climate change. Now, because I was raised Buddhist, I was actually, in Buddhism, we're sort of culturally taught to be stoic. We're told anger is a klesha, which it is, right? It's sort of something to transform. it's a negative emotion that you want to transform. And I became an environmental activist probably at the age of 15 or 16, right? I began working with Greenpeace and NRDC in high school and so on. And that just set me off on my career. People would say to me all the time, I mean, I just remember from my teens that this was a message I would get. Every time I talked about what was wrong when it came to environmental and climate issues and the injustices I saw, people would say, wow, you're so angry. And my anger would turn them off, you know? And I think some of you have experienced this for sure, right? I internalized that at a really young age, as so many women do, you know, so many brown and Black people do, right? Like, this is bad. My anger is bad. I'm not supposed to have these feelings, let alone express them. And it's funny because among my Buddhist teachers, some of the teachers that I include are people like Bell Hooks and Audre Lorde, because they really revolutionized how I thought about my emotions, especially anger, you know. Bell Hooks had written this paper, an essay on narcissistic rage. That was really powerful for me because it taught me to differentiate that there is narcissistic rage, right? Something that is like just really self-centered and self-oriented. And then there is such a thing as righteous anger that really is coming out of compassion and love for everyone else. And I think one of the themes that has come up a lot today is this, how Black, Indigenous, and other people of color can be made invisible, right? In mainstream communities, movements, and other platforms. Jackie Patterson talked about it. Jennifer talked about it. Jennifer Uchendu talked about it. Kyle talked about Indigenous erasure, right? And how he especially really emphasized connectedness and kinship. And for me, this is, you know, it's really powerful, because what I see when I look at my anger and when I look at our anger as a movement is that our anger is an expression of love. It is love for others. It is love for everyone else. It is love for ourselves. It's love for people like us, right? It is a natural survival energy that just wants us to pay attention. Tomorrow, Lama Rod Owens is going to be speaking in the final panel, which is the spiritual resilience panel. He wrote an entire book on this topic. It is called Love and Rage. I recommend it highly. And in that book, there's one sentence that has stayed with me, where he said, anger is the bodyguard for my brokenheartedness. And so, you know, let's just sit with that for a moment, right? In that way, anger is an expression of our heartbreak. And so in this practice, the first part of this practice, what I think would be really helpful for all of us who've been together all day or are coming in now, is what if we were in a conversation with our anger? What if we allowed it to be in a room with us in a safe way? We felt no need to react or resist. What emerges? Let's try it. So we're going to take a moment, sit back, get comfortable, and just acknowledge our anger. Let it be present. Be curious about your anger. What drives it? If you feel called, you can share what drives it in chat. You know, why does anger want our attention? Loss. Yeah. Great. Dishonesty. Harming others. Injustice. Inaction. Absolutely. what needs to step aside for us to allow anger to have its space, to be felt? Hmm. Judgment, that's so important. Mhm, mhm. So what if we viewed our anger as precious and beautiful, as a protector, right? Instead of feeling shame about it, what if we honored it and said, we feel it because of our desire to protect, our desire to heal, our desire to have a just society, to have everyone have their fair share. Before we start the Tonglen practice, I want us to take a moment and just, it's crucial when you're inviting anger into the room that you relax your bodies. And you want to be calm, to have calmness ground you. So we're shifting a little bit into a healing mode, right? And so we have to be grounded to do that. When you want to take care of someone, automatically, we are the ones that make sure that we are stable, right? So we're going to do that. So if you need to stretch, do it. Embrace yourself, do it. Okay. All right. Now that we see what drives anger, can we offer it love, compassion? I want you to visualize this anger in front of you. Like it's a real thing. It has personality. It might have colors. It might look a certain way, right? And so once it's stable in your mind, we're going to mindfully start breathing. So we're going to pay attention to our breathing. And with each inhale, we're taking in what drives our anger. Some of us said loss, some of us said grief, right? Injustice, whatever it is, we're taking the pain of anger. And with each exhale, we're offering love without judgment, compassion without conditions. So we're going to do this a few times. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Anger, like everything else, is in kinship with our other emotions. What emotions does anger protect for you? It can be really easy to just have the emotion take us, so sort of, you know, just take hostage, right? It can be really easy when you bring anger into the room. We can just be so sort of almost like a wave of anger can come over us and we drown in it. But right now you're here to be in conversation with your anger. You're here to work through it, right? To acknowledge it, to center it. And so just keep bringing it back into this conversation you're having with your anger and the pain that you want to relieve, right? You want to relieve the pain of anger. And so just come back to it, keep breathing. You can take a moment to think about everyone in the world, everyone in this online room who is experiencing anger right now, right? Everyone who's angry with you. And so as you breathe in, imagine it's their anger that you are inhaling through your nostrils, down your heart, right? It can have a form, you know. In Tibetan Buddhism, we often visualize smoke, like dark smoke. And then as you exhale, all the love and compassion your heart can hold, can just go out to them, right? So you're inhaling this anger that people are experiencing, and what you're giving back is loving kindness. How does that feel? It feels weird. That's right. It feels weird. But you're not accepting other people's anger, right? You're working to transform them. You're sort of accepting the pain. The thing that we're working through is what is driving the anger, right? And that is so often pain. Pain is what's driving it. And so from this space, you know, from this space of compassion and loving kindness, you can sort of take that, allow that anger to be transformed, you know? Yes, yes. What we see is suffering, right? What is anger but suffering? And so when we see one another as a community in the room, or when we see our own anger, what is that emotion that anger is hiding? What is that suffering? No judgment, no condition. Something Tamara said earlier that really struck me was that even the people we are fighting are burned out, you know? Even the people that we see, we know are causing us harm, right? The people that make us angry, the people who are behind these extractive and exploitative systems, who benefit from them, you know, if they are burned out. The system is just not good for anyone, you know. We might get all the physical things that we think we want, but in terms of actually looking inwards, right? Even these people are burned out and suffering, you know. And that evoke compassion for people that have been harmful to us, right? Where we can see their suffering. We don't have to do anything with it, but where we can see it, right? I mean, the note this wonderful panel ended with earlier was, we need all of us. And so, you know, probably all of us know what it's like to be othered. I know exactly what it's like to be othered, but I don't want to do any othering as part of my work, right? My anger does not need me to other the people that don't like me or hate me, right? What does my anger need from me? What does anger need from you? Is it a direction in your life that you need to take? Maybe an action you could make, a commitment that you need to make or live up to? What does anger need from you? Hmm. To acknowledge the pain, keep speaking up, to breathe, breath, an outlet. So as we're giving and taking, right? We're taking this pain of anger. We're giving loving kindness and compassion. I want us for a moment to just ground ourselves in the earth. Just take a moment, just let your awareness float down your body. Feel how the earth is holding you up right now. Doesn't matter if you're many floors up, whether you're just sitting right now cross-legged or you're up on top of a building. Ultimately, it's the earth that's holding us up right now. It's holding our anger. It's holding our grief, our fear, our pain. And let's take a moment to use Tonglen to allow ourselves to take in the earth's grief, the earth's fear, the earth's pain, and to offer loving kindness and compassion. So here is the earth. She's holding us up. And we take in pain and we give love. All of us in this room together are doing this, right? We're doing it with one another. This is the moment of vulnerability and affirmation, right? So in this process of validating anger, allowing it to exist without judgment, without restrictions, right? We are affirming. We are creating vulnerability. We're providing an outlet. We're breathing. We're acknowledging the pain, right? The experience itself is enough. And as Tamara said, we're burned out. And so for all of us who are right now in this space, connected to our anger, connected to the earth, I want us to reverse the flow. And so now what we do is we give our pain to the earth and to one another. We offer it to be healed, right? And what we get back is loving kindness and compassion. So let's do that. We're going to give our anger away and we're going to take in love. Inhale love, exhale anger. Our anger is grief. Our anger is fear. Our anger is pain. But ultimately, our anger is love. We do this for love. Ending a minute early so we can all take deep breaths, stretch,